Welcome to CTV News Trendline with Michael Stittle and Nik Nanos.
Nik, the federal Liberals have had to pause or walk back some of their initiatives to help fight climate change, notably in Atlantic Canada, where they're offering a 3-year carbon tax exemption on home heating oil. Opposition leaders and many critics have hit back on this. What's your take on all this?
I'm not sure how the Liberals are going to hold back other places, other parts of the country. And Saskatchewan has kind of been first out of the gate on this, with the Premier saying that he won't collect the tax and wants a break. I'm not sure how the Liberals can step back and hold back other exemptions for Canadians from other parts of the country. You know, probably what happened was, the loudest pushback was probably from the Atlantic Canadian caucus. The Atlantic numbers for the Liberals are in the tank, and there are a lot of seats that are in play. The Liberals might be down to perhaps even 5 seats in all of Atlantic Canada, which is a massive setback. It's double jeopardy. Maybe this is the best way to describe it. It's double jeopardy from a political perspective, because they're not going to make people happy by dialing back. Well, maybe a little happy. They're still going to be angry. And then for those individuals who believe in the carbon tax, where the environment is a top national issue concern, this has to be a disappointment for them. So this is double political jeopardy for the Liberals. It's no win, regardless of what they move forward. It might have been better for them just to stay the course and hold on to some of those environmental focused voters.
So, Nik, you said they're facing a lot of pressure from Atlantic MPs. So what does this say about caucus unity?
Well, under the Trudeau leadership, the Liberal caucus has been pretty disciplined, maybe the best way to describe it. There hasn't really been very much, breaking of the ranks. To have something like this happen for a government that has generally been consistent in their support for reconciliation, their support for diversity, equity, and inclusion, all those types of issues, they've been very consistent over the course of the last number of years. To see them reverse themselves or step back or step down on a key plank, the carbon tax, speaks to probably the pressure that they were under within, when I say they, I mean Justin Trudeau, the pressure that he was under coming out of caucus, and specifically members in Atlantic Canada, who probably believe that their ridings are at risk. And you know what? Their ridings are at risk. This is kind of like the survival instinct kicking in for some members of parliament, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens from caucus members in other parts of the country.
So how much pressure are they under from voters? What's your latest ballot tracking saying?
Well, they're 13 points back of the Conservatives. The Conservatives are at 38, which is still majority territory. The Liberals are at 25, NDP 20, and you know what? There's only a 5-point gap right now between the Liberals and the New Democrats. That's not a lot. And if some Liberals decide to shift over to the NDP or just move away, we could see the Liberals and the New Democrats at some point in the future, perhaps even within the margin of error, which is bad news for the Liberals. It's kind of like the pre-2015 danger zone for the Liberals, where they were in 3rd place. Green Party's at 8%. They're up 2 points. Bloc's at 6. People's Party at 3. But right now, the Conservatives still firmly in the driver's seat. Liberals basically on the ropes.
It's interesting, Nik, that we've seen a little rise in Green support. The Liberals have made fighting climate change, a major part of what they want to do, and the NDP in their governing deal are sort of tied with that. So if we continue to see the Green Party climb, what does that mean for the NDP and the Liberals?
Well, it means vote splits that probably help the Conservatives, actually. Let's face it, if you're an environmental voter, you could have been with the Liberals. You're probably disappointed with what's happened in the last week or so. The NDP are connected to the Liberals from a parliamentary agreement perspective, and the NDP are focused on pharmacare. We haven't heard very much on the environment from Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats, which means that perhaps this could be an opportunity for the Green Party to re-engage Canadians, to defend and advance kind of their carbon tax and their environmental policy. And they could be a parking space for voters that are environmentally conscious. And you know what? If an election scenario presents itself where the Conservatives are going to win regardless, people will start deserting all the other parties, and they'll look at parties like the Green Party, like the Bloc, and even the Bloc Québécois.
So we've looked at the popular support. How does that translate into seat projections?
Well, when we look at the trend line on the Nanos seat projections that we do every month, you can see that the Conservatives have a significant advantage. The Liberals right now are poised to lose 46 seats, with the Conservatives picking up 40. And when you look at some of the regional numbers, the Liberals, the only place where they're picking up seats and may pick up seats is the province of Quebec, 7 at our count. But you check out those Conservative numbers across the country. They're picking up seats in British Columbia. They're picking up seats in Ontario, in Atlantic Canada. The interesting thing is that there's still about 72 seats or thereabouts that are too close to call. So it's not over by any stretch. It might not be as bad for the Liberals as predicted, because there's still some seats that are Liberal seats, especially, but they're basically those members are in a fight for their life.
Can we just take a moment and zoom in on BC, Nick? Because I remember in the last election, I think the Liberals and Conservatives were only separated by something like a couple ridings. Where are they now in your projections?
Well, what we're seeing in BC is the Liberals getting completely pummeled in the province. We have them losing 11 seats with
Wow.
yeah, exactly, with the Conservatives actually being the primary beneficiary. So think of BC as that the Liberals going down, splits between the Liberals and the New Democrats actually helping the Conservatives pick up seats. So that's going to be a key battleground. The other wild card in British Columbia is going to be the Green Party. It's going to be interesting to see how the Green Party does in British Columbia, because they usually punch above their weight in that province, and that I'm sure they'd like to try to pick up another seat. And British Columbia would be ground zero for picking up another seat right now.
And I see another big change in Ontario.
Yeah, and this Ontario is what is primarily putting the Conservatives in the driver's seat, especially pushing them into majority territory, because right now the Conservatives are poised to win a lot more seats in Ontario, and this is where the Liberals are just getting hammered. Not a big change for the New Democrats in Ontario, but it looks like all those suburban seats, like the Bramptons, Mississaugas, those types of things, some of the ridings in northern Toronto, Vaughan moving towards the Conservatives, the NDP potentially having a pickup in places like the Danforth and stuff like that, but primarily a loss for the Liberals and a pickup mostly for the Conservatives, with a little bit of NDP thrown in there.
Any other surprises or emerging trends that you're seeing?
Well, the fact that the Liberals right now could pick up perhaps another 7 seats in Quebec speaks to the fact that this is going to be the Liberal core vote, the heartland, whatever you want to call it, their regional base. So if we see the Liberal numbers unravel in Quebec, then that's going to be a massive problem, because in my experience, to win an election, you need a regional base, and then you need to challenge in other areas. So the fact that the Liberals still have a regional base in Quebec is good for them at this time, but they can't afford to lose them. Right now, for the Conservatives, they have a regional base in the West, which is a lock. When I say the West, La Prairies. And they're also doing really well in provinces like Ontario, British Columbia, and Atlantic Canada.
Nick, I think I know the answer to this, but what's your big takeaway from all this?
Big takeaway is that the carbon tax step down is double jeopardy for the Liberals. They lose on both sides of the equation. And the Conservatives still in the driver's seat with a 13-point advantage. And watch out for those Green Party numbers. Maybe they'll move up and create even more interesting vote splits.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at the top issues facing Canadians. Nick, we had some bad economic news lately. We're in a technical recession, as they say. And I know every week you track which issues matter the most to Canadians, and I'm wondering where the economy is in that.
Well, the economy is still quite important. It looks like fiscal issues and economic issues are really dominating the mind share of Canadians. Inflation, that's the top issue, pulling away at 18%. Jobs in the economy, 12, housing, 11. So think between all those things, there's really a big focus on dollars right now. Environment's at 8, healthcare's at 8. But right now, what's clear is that Canadians are worried about paying the bills, they're worried about the economy, and they're worried about housing affordability.
Nik, I noticed that housing is the third most important issue to Canadians, and you've done some surveys on how that's actually tied to how Canadians feel about our immigration targets.
Yeah, housing is numerically third, but factoring the margin of error, it's basically tied for second with jobs in the economy. So think of them as firmly in second. It's interesting in a survey that we did, just at the tail end of the summer, we asked Canadians about the intersection between immigration and housing, and went into the whole issue of, the government accepting or having a target of 465,000 new people to bring into the country. And we asked Canadians, whether they, wanted more, the same, or fewer immigrants. And right now, and, compared to the benchmark, about 8% of Canadians think that we should be accepting more individuals. That's down a full 9 percentage points. But check out the fewer. It's up to 53%, now a majority. That's up 13 points since the benchmark. And this speaks to the fact that for many Canadians, they're not experts in immigration and they're not experts in housing, but they see that, the intersection of those two things suggests that, perhaps we should be slowing down the pace that the Liberals have currently set or have been setting on the immigration front. It doesn't mean that we're against immigration. It just means that for some, it's like, how is this going to work? We're bringing in a lot of people, basically the equivalent of the city of Hamilton, every year now.
And just this week, Mark Miller released a report and how to improve their immigration targets, and said that housing would play a key factor in setting those targets going forward. So obviously the Liberal government is paying attention. Absolutely.
The fact that they have a housing minister, we'd have to look into the archives to find out when was the last time the federal government had a housing minister, because housing is not a federal responsibility. The fact that they have a housing minister, and now the fact that they've said that immigration targets and levels will be connected to things like housing, gives the Liberals a little more political cover, because it shows that they're sensitive to the economic environment and the affordability, the housing affordability crisis that we're dealing with right now.
Nik, I think we'll leave it there for this episode. As always, thank you very much.
Take it easy.